Boy, it's going to be a day of all sorts of new car automotive adventures. In a way, I've been waiting my whole life for this.
I always said you don't want to drive one of these if you're a bank robber, because you got to wait for the suspension to rise. Beautiful. Nice job.
So cool.
Rear engine, air-cooled V8 Hemi.
Oh man, oh man.
Isn't this wonderful?
I have to leave now. This is one of those mornings that you dream about if you're a barn find hunter guy. I'd like to introduce you to Charles Gould. Charles is somebody I just re-met. We met 20 to 25 years ago at Lime Rock, Connecticut at a racetrack, and I was gathering information on a story about a strange little car, which might be in here, right? Messerschmitt.
The Tiger's not here today. No.
Ah, okay. Yeah. Well, a Messerschmitt. Anyway, thanks for meeting us here.
My pleasure.
It's taken us a while to put this together because Charles is in central Massachusetts. The guys holding the cameras are from northern Michigan, and I'm up in Maine. So we all got together this morning, and we actually got here early. As I was saying earlier, we could do an episode of the cars that are outside here.
I know.
Don't even have to go inside the building.
As you'll learn, I really love anything that's unusual, and we kind of run an orphanage for unloved cars. So we drag home stuff that other people wouldn't bother with or that I shouldn't bring home, but we save them. But now I love the barn finds, as do you. I mean, this Citroen Safari wagon. Yep. We just hauled off Martha's Vineyard 2 weeks ago. Really? And it was in a barn for 42 years or 40 years, and you know, it's dead and it needs everything, but we had to save it.
So how do you get your leads about cars like this?
So at this point, they kind of find us. So somebody will come to me and say, my neighbor's dentist's daughter's husband's father had one of these, and it may still be in the barn, and we chase down every lead, because for me, it's the hunt, as you well understand. And you know, we pulled this out, and we really expected it to be just to crumple away and rust, because it was on Martha's Vineyard. And,
right.
And it's surprisingly solid. Motor's stuck, so it may have to come out, although we're hoping we can free it. But the Safaris are very hard to find. It's a 1972 one owner.
Brian Johnson from AC/DC.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe if you're hip, you know who Brian Johnson is. He's got the best voice in rock and roll. That's the most beautiful car in the world to Brian Johnson. So congratulations on dragging that home.
I love him.
So this is a recent one. Let's see what else you've got that
let's go.
You've had for a while. Borgward Isabella, look how solid that car is.
I know, that's really wonderful. We just got that from Jeff Lane, actually.
Did you really? Well,
yeah.
We visited Jeff Lane.
He's a great guy.
That was one of the most viewed programs we've ever done.
I'm sure. So, excuse the mess.
Man, you got it bad.
Yeah, we're seriously out of control.
I mean, this is amazing. I could spend days in here. But what got you into this?
So, I loved cars ever since I was a kid. I mean, I had Matchbox that were crazy, and I used to visit my ailing grandmother with my mom, and every day after we visited her, she would take me to a little corner store and we'd buy the Matchbox toy.
And isn't that what this collection is called?
Exactly. Matchbox Motors, based upon that.
Man.
But I bought my first real car when I was 9 years old. You know, we got it running. It was a 54 Chevy for $20 or $25. And we got it running and drove it all around with no brakes and had a great time. And it was just wonderful.
You got a lift here. You got a car and a lift. Who works on this stuff?
I do it all. And we have probably 8 to 12 volunteers who come in and out at different times. And what's really wonderful is they're passionate about cars. They're true good friends. And they get all what happens is we wrench like on Saturday, and then I toss keys to everyone on Sunday, and we go out for rides. So I get the help, which is just, it's more than I can handle now. And they get the pleasure of owning an antique car without any of the expense. So it's really a mutually wonderful thing.
Mm-hmm. So you gotta check the propellers out on this little sucker here.
We had heard about an Amphicar for sale up in Vermont, and we checked it out. It was an ad in Hemmings, actually, and it was way too much money, but I called him anyhow. And we negotiated. I kept calling him back every 4 months for 4 years, and we finally got to an agreeable price and went up to get it. And it was a brand new car. They had bought 3 to sell at their dealership, and the first one sold in 2 weeks. The second one took 6 years to sell, and the third one they put in the barn because they couldn't sell it.
And that's it?
Yeah, it came with 210 miles on it, which
on
was
that car,
the distance from the rail yard to the dealership. And he stored it in a place where they stored batteries, so the paint had peeled off. So he repainted it original color, and it's a decent job. But it literally was a brand new car.
So here's a funny story that people watching this program probably never knew. I spent 25 years in NASCAR or auto racing as a profession. And at one point, Dale Earnhardt owned an Amphicar.
Really?
Ken Schrader owned an Amphicar.
Wow.
Gary Nelson, who was a NASCAR inspector, owned an Amphicar. And they would all get to Daytona a couple of days before the 500 crowds would show up. And there's a lake in the middle of Daytona, and they would have an Amphicar race on land and in water.
That's great. That's wonderful.
Nobody knew that. And, you know, I don't know if they still own those cars, but there's one of them.
They're great. They're just great fun. So you know the deux chevaux.
In fact, I wrote a story in the New York Times about these cars. So tell us about them.
So it's, you know, the French people's car, and it was designed to be very simple and very practical, and anybody could work on them. So if you had to replace a headlight, you really didn't need tools. They're kind of like, they just come apart, you know?
Man.
And if you look, the hood hinge is a piano hinge. So if you want to work on it, you open the hood and just slide it out of the slot, and the hood comes off in your hands. The same with the doors. And the front seats have thumb screws, and you can undo them and use them as a beach chair. And the convertible top rolls back like a sardine can. And they're extremely softly sprung, which is just amazing. When these things go down the road, they just,
Jeez.
you know. And it was Andre Citroen wanted to put every farmer in a car, because all they had was tractors. And the order was it had to be very simple. It was an umbrella on wheels. And he said it has to be such a soft suspension that they can take a basket of fresh eggs over a plowed field without breaking them. Sorry, they're a little dirty, but...
So two-cylinder.
Two-cylinder, horizontally opposed. Mm-hmm. And it's the early ones were 375 cc's, the later ones are 602. And they evolved. The early cars were like 9 horse, the later ones are like 26. Vespa 400, which was Vespa's only automobile, made from 59 through 61. Mm-hmm. They're really beautiful little cars and very elegant. It's a two-cylinder, air-cooled 400cc two-stroke.
No components from a Vespa bike in here?
None.
It's all, okay.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And if you notice, the tank on the right has a little gauge on it. So when you pump the fuel into the tank, if you bought 2¼ gallons, you would dial in 2¼ and then crank it, and it would put the right amount of oil into the tank for the two-stroke mix. So it's a metering system, and it's brilliant.
Wow, very nice.
Let's go look at the Tatra.
A fascinating car.
So do you know a little bit about these?
I do, but those people don't, so I want you to tell us.
Okay. This is a 1968 Tatra. T603 is the model. I desperately wanted one of these and asked Jeff Lane, because he's the biggest Tatra collector in the country. And he told me that he didn't have anything available, but there was a guy who had just bought one in the Czech Republic and had it restored and drove it across the Czech Republic to Germany, Bremerhaven, where he put it on a ship, brought it to Baltimore, and drove it from Baltimore to Pebble Beach, because Tatra was the featured mark. And all through the trip, he was having trouble with it, and he was calling Jeff, and he was calling me, and we were coaching him through it. And he finally got to Pebble Beach, and they wouldn't allow him on the field because he hadn't pre-registered. So he drove this from Prague, and they turned him down for all the trailer queens. So he went to another event at the venue, and he did very well with it. But then he wanted to sell it, and I talked with him, and we just couldn't get together on price. He was way higher than I could pay. But it went on Bring a Trailer, and I was coming home, and somebody called me about it. So I went on the thing, and there was 9 minutes left to the auction. So I pulled over, and I ended up being high bidder, and I thought he'd be mad at me because it was a much lower price, but he was thrilled that I got it. So it's just another wonderful story, but they're just wonderful. I mean, if you look at the upholstery.
Steel body?
Oh, yeah. If you look at the upholstery and the fabric, let me move this stuff.
And this is all restored?
It was restored in the Czech Republic.
Yeah.
But what's interesting about these cars, it's sometimes very hard to tell the year, because in the Czech Republic, if you wanted to fix your Tatra, you would give it to the factory, and they would put it on the assembly line with the new cars. And they would give it all of the updates. So they would change the grille, or they would change the headlights, and give it almost the same features as the new ones. But the most amazing thing about these, of course, is rear engine, air-cooled V8 Hemi. And it's just amazing because it's You know, there's just, people talk about the weight distribution, you know, being cantilevered out behind the rear axle, all that weight, but they handle surprisingly well. And there's a great video on YouTube that shows a Czech stunt driver. It's about a 10 or 12 minute video just running one of these through the paces in this humorous ad for the cars, and the police are chasing him, and he goes lock to lock on the highway, and the car goes like this, but it never loses it. And then he takes it up a mountain all through the snow, and then he rolls it down the mountain to show how strong the cage is. And it's just a wonderful video.
Rolls it down the mountain.
Yeah. I'll send the link to you because you'll get a kick out of it.
So is that an aluminum block?
No, it's a cast block, but it's got a lot of aluminum parts on it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's rear-wheel drive?
Rear-wheel drive.
And it's automatic or?
No, it's a 4-speed manual, but it's, you know, it's the shift linkage has something like 21 Heim joints from the control to the transmission. And when I first got it, I told everybody I can't get second gear, you know, it just grinds, it's horrible. And they said, but you have first, third, fourth, and reverse? And I said, yeah. They said, you're lucky, don't change anything. Because it's so precision, but we're dialing it in. We're going to fix it. Wow. But they're just wonderful. They're really remarkable cars.
So this is one of the more significant cars in your world. Wow.
Yeah, I love this one. And the Messerschmitts are very significant for me. I've loved them. I've collected them forever. I bought every Messerschmitt I could find, and they're just fascinating.
All right, I'm going to ask you, can I sit in one?
Yeah. You know what? I got one over here. You can not only sit in, you can drive.
Yeah. How much does that weigh?
534 pounds, 590 pounds, something like that.
I'd like to thank a new sponsor to Barn Find Hunter, Battery Tender. I've been a long-time customer for Battery Tender products. They keep your batteries charged. Now they have devices that inflate tires, that can jumpstart your car and invert power. If you'd like to buy one, you get a 20% discount for watching this program. Check the description below.
If it's all right, I'll give you a ride first, and then you can drive it.
Okay.
But it's very straightforward, kind of like an airplane canopy.
So it's a 3-passenger.
Right. Well, 2 and a kid, and that folds up if you have luggage. Mm-hmm. The seat's on a parallelogram to make it easy to get into.
So Messerschmitt, car, airplane, were the common parts on here?
No common parts. But what happened was after the war, under the Reparations Act, they were prohibited from building aircraft.
So when I was a kid, my mother was from Germany.
Yeah.
And when I was a kid, I was 10 years old. We went to Germany and we spent 5 weeks there. My 2 little brothers and my mother actually thought about buying one of these.
Really? Oh my God, that's
drive
wonderful.
Us around. Well, she didn't do that.
Probably.
But I was getting all excited that we could bring it back home. So again, 191 cc.
Yep, 1-cylinder, 2-stroke, and it's got a drive to the chain case, which is an enclosed chain case.
And the Tiger version of this, which had a traditional rear end, 2 wheels in the back, that was a 2-cylinder?
Correct, 2-cylinder, 500 cc. So it was really the muscle car of Messerschmitts. So do you mind riding in the back first, Tom?
No, not at all. Okie dokie. In a way, I've been waiting my whole life for this.
Throw your legs way up forward. All right.
Jeez.
You all right?
Is it always this hard to start? Goodbye. Does that have reverse?
It does, and the way it does it is you shut the motor off and push the ignition key in, which reverses polarity to the starter, and then you have theoretically 4 reverse gears.
The engine turns the opposite direction?
Yeah.
No kidding.
But you don't want to drive it fast in reverse, because the steering wheel's in the back, it doesn't handle well.
People around here used to you buzzing around?
Oh yeah.
What's the furthest you've driven this?
I've done 100-mile day in it.
No kidding.
Yeah. I'll turn it around down here and then you can try it. And wind it out. You don't want to shift too early. Okay. How's it feel?
Yeah, this is pretty okay. I wonder if anybody's ever driven one across the United States.
I don't know.
You know, I drove a Model T across the United States. Maybe this is what I need to take next.
Park it to the left in front of the Citroen and then we can get something else out.
So this only has 4,900 miles from new.
It's fun, right?
That's fun. It's a blast, yeah.
So you're gonna see this car rise. You may wanna film it. I always said you don't wanna drive one of these if you're a bank robber, because you gotta wait for the suspension to rise. See it go up? There's a great video of a bank robbery in Paris. So the police come in another DS, they rob the bank, they have a shootout, then they run out. The robbers get in one car, the police get in the other,
And they're waiting.
and they both sit there for the cars to rise before they start the chase. It's really very
wonderful.
funny.
Man, what a beautiful car. Wow, wow, wow. Boy, it's going to be a day of all sorts of new car automotive adventures.
So the only things you need to know,
Okay, is
so
that
the brake
brake?
is a brake button. They call it the champignon, which is mushroom. And it's only got about a ½ inch of travel, so you really have to modulate. You just barely want to rock your toe into it, you know? Gears are here. You're going to go forward for first.
So it's a non-clutch manual gearbox.
But it's not like a semi-automatic or a, you know, like anything you've ever seen before. It's a fully manual gearbox, but it's all done hydraulically.
I put my foot on the brake
Right,
and push it forward.
right.
I'm in gear.
You're in gear. Now, for a second, you're going to come off the throttle and go click, click through neutral, and then you gently add the acceleration, and it will adjust accordingly.
Okay, so here I go. So I'm going to let my foot off the brake.
Yeah, and just when you're rolling, practice the brake so you get a feel for it. Very, very gentle on both, but feel the brake. Very unusual.
So the goal for a Deux Chevaux was soft suspension. Everything about these cars was soft.
Yeah.
Okay, so off the gas, click, click, second.
It's amazing, isn't it?
It's amazing.
And it's all done with hydraulic valves. Beautiful. Nice job.
So have you taken one of these on a trip?
I have. This one I've taken probably a couple hundred
Look at
miles.
this.
Oh, that's Nancy. That's my wife.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah.
Oh. Can you downshift in these or no?
You can, but you got to be a lot slower for second. You can downshift to second. Don't go to first till you're stopped.
So then I just downshifted to second. It didn't downshift, you know, there was no engine brake in there.
Yeah, because you were actually below the speed that you would have felt the braking. I think you might be in neutral, not first. Am I right? Yeah. There you go.
You know these things. Ooh. So is that like I'm too harsh on the...
The throttle is very much like the brake. You have to modulate very, very delicately.
So you can change the tire in this without needing a jack?
Yeah, so you put the suspension in the highest position, you insert a tool into the side of it, and then you drop the suspension in the lowest position, and it will go on the tool and lift the wheel off the ground.
Makes sense.
And if you don't have a spare, you can take one of the rear wheels off and run it on 3. It'll roll on 3, no problem.
You have so many cool things in your head, boy.
Been
Wow.
doing it a long time.
Man. You know, one of the things we try to do in this series is start cars. We don't get to drive very much because usually like they have no wheels on them. Pretty spectacular.
Isn't it wonderful?
Yeah. And this is what Brian Johnson says is the best car in the world.
I happen to love them. I mean, they're very complex, and they're, you know, they require some finessing to get them right. But I just love them. I like cars that are unusual.
Cool.
So
You're Nancy.
say hello to Nancy.
I need to hug you because you're like the perfect wife.
That's my enabler.
Yeah, give us like another, you know, a couple of cars that
Okay, so
are intriguing to you.
this is an AC Invacar, and they have all hand controls. So the throttle is a motorcycle throttle. The steering is on the handlebars, which steers inherently backwards. It's really weird.
So steering, you
So if I push forward on this side of the wheel,
the front wheel down here. Okay, I'm looking at it.
it kind of goes the other way.
So in other words, you turn right and it goes left.
Right, exactly.
Ooh-wee. Wow. I mean, maybe coming out of the pub on a Friday night,
Exactly.
it might make sense, but otherwise, oh boy.
Here is the Heinkel Trojan, which is a Heinkel made in Ireland under license. These have the doors that open from the front.
The wheel on this thing, rear wheels are 20 inches apart, 24 inches apart.
Right.
Is that a single rear wheel, or is that all?
So they made them both ways. This one is a single. I have one in the other building that's a four-wheeler.
Mm-hmm. Now I was looking at this. Is this a Bond?
No, so this is a Goggomobil Buckle Dart. And what happened was a guy named Bill Buckle out of Australia wanted to sell Goggomobiles, but the import tariff was too great. So he negotiated with Hans Glass from Goggomobil and from Glass Company, which later became BMW. And he bought just the platforms, which could come in with no tariff because they were considered car parts. And he reproduced all the models in fiberglass in Australia. So he made the coupes, the sedans, so they called them limousines, and he made a carry-all van as well. And then he designed and built this little roadster, which we call our Barbie Corvette. And it's just two sandwich halves that are sealed around where the rubber molding is. They were just really nice. And he went back to Hans Glass and tried to sell him the idea, but by then the microcar craze was really over, so they didn't bite, they didn't take it.
Is there a metal chassis in this?
Yeah, it's got a pan, much like a Volkswagen.
So it's not like a Berkeley?
No, not at all. Mm-hmm. And this was the last car made, which was a prototype with a single suicide door on the driver's side.
Oh, okay. Huh.
And it's really cute because it opens backwards. And so we actually had Bill Buckle visit us here. And he was, what was he, 94 when he came?
Oh, man.
And we had a grand old time with him. He was supposed to come for a day, and we picked him up at the airport in the Messerschmitt, and we gave him rides in all the cars. He ended up staying a week, he and his wife. And it was just wonderful. And he signed all of our cars. And I said to him, I said, Bill, I understand that there was only one car made with the door, and I think this is it. Can you verify for me? And he said, yes, that's right. And he looked at the hinges, and he looked at the door jamb, and he said, that's it. And I said, well, I'm confused because someone else said there were two cars made. And he said, yeah, that's right. And I said, and somebody else told me three cars. And he says, yeah, that's right. And I said, well, Bill, which is it, 1, 2, or 3? And he says, for Christ's sakes, Charles, it was 50 years ago. How am I supposed to remember? And it was just wonderful.
All right, so Charles, we've heard about like the cars that mean something to you.
Yeah.
You're a car freak too. What car kind of turns you on? Do you have a favorite? If I was going to take all these cars away and you could keep one.
Not going to happen.
Wow. Is she an attorney?
She's great. She's just great.
My little gray mouse from the Isle of Tasmania. That's one of my favorites.
The little Austin?
Austin A.
Really?
Yeah.
A30, yeah.
So little gray mouse. So you got this from Tasmania?
Yes. So Chuck wanted a buckle dart and couldn't find any in the U.S. So a friend of ours came from Australia to visit. He had an Amphicar, and we struck up a great friendship. And he said, you know, Charles, I can go look for a buckle dart for you. So he spent the better half of a year trying to find cars, and the cost of one buckle dart was going to be outrageous. So he said, we can get a container. So he spent the better part of the year finding cars.
And
you
filled the container?
He filled the container.
Well, actually, he found too many, and we filled 2 containers.
Okay.
Well, yeah.
Wow. And so do you drive this car around?
Yes, it's really a delightful car to drive, and it's got trafficators and stuff.
It's an 850 motor in there?
Yeah.
Is that yellow van a Morris Minor?
No, that's a Renault Fourgonnet,
Oh,
an R4 Fourgonnet.
Mm-hmm. If you remember what Charles said when we first started this episode, that he is an orphanage for unwanted cars. A lot of you write comments when we do an episode, and you say, oh, that guy's a hoarder, he shouldn't keep all those cars, you know, they're going bad, whatever. Well, this is quite the opposite. These cars are not loved. I mean, a lot of these cars have spent their lives, people have mocked them, laughed at them, because they were odd looking. They had unusual parts, they did unusual things, they had 2 cylinders instead of V8s. What the Goulds have done here is save cars that 25 years ago would have been trashed. And they're in a heated building in Massachusetts, and he's saving these cars for future generations, because he just said that he's getting older and he needs to start finding places to put these cars as he ages. And so I'm sure more and more are going to be coming on the market. So you've got a couple of Saabs, I notice.
Yeah, I love the Saabs. So this one is I think it's a 73. No, this one's a 69. The other one is a 62 bullnose.
I'm thinking about doing a book about New England Saabs, New England Saab stories.
There's a lot.
Yeah.
And we have
history and funny stories.
Yeah, and we got a bunch of friends that have them, so we can certainly hook you up with all that.
Yeah, cool.
Including some of the Sonettes. Do you want to come around and see the motor on this? It's really quite interesting.
I'll come around.
Look at the switch gear on the dashboard before you go by it.
Oh, look at that.
Isn't that wonderful?
All the dashboard, all the gauges and switches are all right here in the column. How neat. All right, so what a comical little front end here.
Yeah, it's like a little fish, isn't it?
Yeah, right.
But this is really an interesting motor. So these are just wonderful. I mean, it's a 2-cylinder, horizontally opposed, 850cc. It's air-cooled. The shrouds are aluminum. The whole car was originally aluminum in '54, but it became cost prohibitive, so they went to steel bodies. But they kept the aluminum bumpers and a lot of aluminum parts.
Were they part of another car company, or was Panhard the company?
The company, yeah.
So it was a competitor to Citroen?
Originally, then they acquired them. Originally, it was Panhard and Lavoisier. And if you go to the late 1800s, they were making cars. So very, very early company. What's interesting is, if you notice, the motor mounts are right on the headers. And as you talked about your buddy that would carrying motors, I bet you saw him carrying them by the headers. So it's a logical place to put a motor mount.
Wow.
And it makes sense, and the whole thing is, in suspended rubber.
Did you buy this in the States?
I did. I had one. We found one in a barn before I knew anything about the cars, and it was rodent infested and smelled like animal urine, and it was horrible. And it was rusty. But we got it running, and I just loved the car. I was fascinated by it. So I sold it in the hopes I would find another one, and it took me almost 2 decades to find another one. Then I found this one, and he wanted too much money, and I told him what I thought it was worth, and I said, do your due diligence, and when you realize my number's fair, please call me back. And he did. And he had just restored it, so the
nice
body,
job,
not the interior.
So I'm looking at little cars. I'm surrounded by little cars, and then I see one of the largest American cars of recent years, an Olds Tornado.
Yeah.
What a contrast! Now, and the purpose for that being here is what?
Well, I don't really have a purpose or a theme. I mean, I really like microcars, and that's where we focus. But I really am drawn to anything that I find interesting. And when I was very young as a kid, I had one of those in a 66, and it really put a place in my heart. I mean, I just love them.
Got it. If you like these videos, you really should check out the Hagerty Drivers Club. You get 24/7 roadside assistance with flatbed towing, subscription to an award-winning magazine, and more. Sign up today. The link is in the description below.
Now, I need to get you to this because this one is really fascinating. So this is a 1916 Mercer Touring Car.
1916.
Made in Mercer County, New Jersey. And
is that right?
Yeah, and it's really quite a car because crankcase is cast aluminum, and the cylinder block is cast with the head. There's no removable head. So the cylinder bores, the valve ports, the exhaust ports, everything is all cast in one piece. We couldn't do it today. And they did it 115 years ago with no problem. And it's so to work on it, you do 36 bolts at the flange, and you lift the whole top of the engine off the pistons. And under here is the valve train. I mean, look at these parts. They're just stunning.
Look at that. All cast aluminum.
Yeah. It's just beautiful. And you see these bolts here?
And what year is this, 1919?
16.
So, there was no right way or wrong way to build an engine then, because everything that anybody did was a new design.
Yeah.
And so I love seeing this technology that sadly never made it. Had it been developed 2 years earlier, we might all have something like that.
And if you look at, this is really interesting. This has a USL electric starter. And what it is the entire flywheel is wound like an armature. And when you press a button, it energizes the field around the flywheel. So there's no gear, no reduction starter. And the motor will go voom, 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 voom. And once it starts, it'll close a relay, and that becomes the generator system. And on the back of the bell housing is this beautiful cast aluminum disc, and it says Clean Armature Weekly. And the way to clean it is you take this disc off and you put emery on your fingers and reach into the rotating flywheel and hope that you don't lose your fingers.
And all these cars are drivable,
Most everything in this building runs.
Isn't that great?
Some things might be a battery away or a brake fleet away, but basically everything in this building we use. The other building has got more projects.
We're in building number 1, which is the green building, and we're about to enter building number 2, which is the blue building.
All right, so the lighting's not great in here, so I'll get the door open for you.
Oh man, isn't
this wonderful?
I have to leave now. Wow.
Isn't this wonderful? So this is the barn stuff.
Well, you are all over the map. I mean, I'm looking Chrysler Imperial and a Messerschmitt, like within the same view. Jeez. So is there anything interesting in here that, you know, means something to you or it has a great story attached to it?
They all do, every one of them, but the Goggomobil van, these are very rare. They made them for the Postal Service. They only made 300 of them, and less than 100 survive.
Postal Service where? In the States?
In Germany.
Germany. And
they have sliding doors. If you can reach the door,
I
that
see
goes.
the slide.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And they're, you know, they're based on the Goggomobil platform, and they're very rare. As I said, there's less than 300 survived, and we found 4 of them. So we actually sold 1, but we have 3 still. This one was taken off the road, if you look at the plate, in '59 in Colorado.
Colorado, yeah.
So it was 1 year old when they blew up the motor. The problem is they shipped their motors to the United States, and people didn't understand 2-strokes, and they ran them without putting oil in them. So they blew them up. And so this one literally was on the road less than a year before it came off, and it's got this wonderful, wonderful surface rust that I want to preserve. I don't want to paint it. So we got a new old stock motor for it. We had one in inventory just from a previous one we bought. And it's a wonderful story hunting for it, because I remembered I had one, but I got it 30 years before, and I didn't know if I had sold it yet or not. So Nancy and I are crawling through this loft full of parts, and you know, we're just throwing things over our shoulder, and we finally got to the Goggomobil vein. It was like mining. And when we got to the Goggomobil vein, we kept going, and we found 2 bad motors, and then we found the new old stock one that had the tag from the factory. So it'll go in that eventually.
So 2 huge Imperials. What's the deal here?
I just love the Imperials. I think they're just great cars. And I had this in a black one, and then this one came up. And this is kind of the Pony Express car. Everybody takes it a little further. One guy did the mechanics, another guy painted it, then he sold it. Another guy had the upholstery done and he sold it. So we're the next stage. We're trying to get it reassembled. And I love the color, so I sold my black one to buy this one. And then if you look back there, there's a XK150 fixed head coupe in the corner. There's a 61 E-Type next to it, a Model T Ford, a DKW with a factory sunroof or Webasto sunroof.
So you say you don't sell cars often, but you sell cars sometimes.
Yeah.
So it's really to trade up to something that you more desirable.
Yeah, and now at my age, we're thinning the collection now just because I'm not going to live long enough to finish them, and I don't want to leave the kids and Nancy with too much to manage, although they don't want me to sell anything. So we're selling a lot now.
Do your children share your
Oh, yeah.
passion? Yeah.
Both of my daughters are crazy about. They ride motorcycles. They work on the cars. They drive them all the time. We just had an event last weekend, and they both were in 5 different cars all weekend long. And you know, both of them learned to drive at age 9 on a right-hand drive mini moke.
So we're in the blue building now, which is cold storage, and we're about to see what's in shipping containers, which is colder storage.
All right, so this one has got a couple pieces.
There's a woman in here.
Yes, there is.
Excuse me, ma'am. Just want to say I like your car, a little police car. And so this is one of those, oh, look at that, Citroen station wagon. So what's that car in the back?
It's an Austin Ruby, 1934, I think. And then in here,
So you don't show much love to these cars.
I do. This one we got running and got brakes in it. It's just we ran out of storage in the winter, so it ended up going in here.
Yep.
But this one is running.
544 Volvo.
Yeah.
Look at a 48 Ford, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it looks like.
And a nice Alpha.
This one doesn't have a running gear in it. So I'm looking for a motor. And
You know what goes nicely in there? Mazda Miata.
oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And you could just change the lettering on it, and nobody knows the difference.
And is it bolt right in, or?
No, it doesn't bolt right in, but it's a very clean swap.
Yeah.
That's a cool car. What is that?
So that's a Lloyd LT 600 light truck
German.
200. Yeah, 600. Yeah.
Yeah.
2-cylinder, 4-stroke, 600 cc.
A Lloyd. Wow.
And I found that local here. That was very close. But he had lost the hood and the bumper after he painted it. The body shop lost them. So I found a hood and bumper in Sweden, and we had it shipped back. The shipping was more than the parts.
This is one of those mornings that you dream about if you're a barn find hunter guy. And Charles, I have to thank you. It's taken a while. It's taken a few months to put this together, but thanks for meeting us here.
No problem at all. It's my pleasure.
You
Thank
and
you
your
for
wife
coming.
have an amazing collection of cars, and your energy and enthusiasm is like over the top, man.
We just love it. Yeah.
Love it.
So thanks for letting us share it with you.
Charles,
Thank you so much, sir.
thank you so much. Happy hunting.